Hey folks, welcome back to Only the Best Fantasy Novels. My name is Robin, and today I want to talk about the final book in the Codex Alera series by Jim Butcher, First Lord's Fury. And this is a book that I enjoyed tremendously. I enjoyed to a fair extent. I wouldn't say tremendously, but I enjoyed quite a bit, despite the rocky start that this series had for me. Butcher just managed to pick things up and run with them in a really fun way after the ending of the second book, and it never quite relented until the end. So at this point now, I do have to say that this series, it was quite a lot of fun. It's certainly not something I'll put in my top 10 or maybe even my top 50, but it's definitely up there among the it's definitely among the better of the series that I've read so far. Especially if you're a fan of Jim Butcher, you definitely want to try this. But anyway, what is First Lord's Fury about? The invasion of Alera by the Void is almost complete, and the last remnants of humanity have essentially gathered in the only location in the entire land that took the threat of the Void seriously. And it's a location where everything started, the Calderon Valley. As they prepare to make their final stand there, the Allied forces led by Tavi have landed, but they're hundreds of leagues away. Can they make it to the Calderon Valley in time to save everyone? And that's kind of what this book is all about. Like the defense of the last remnants of humanity and Tavi's race against time to arrive in some shape to be able to actually contribute anything to that fight. Um, but yeah, like one of the things I mentioned very early on in one of my first, like probably the first video of this series, is that this series, it's very much fantasy of the classic style, in terms of just the tropes and the plots and these kind of things. So you could predict pretty much how things are going to end, and ultimately that's exactly how it worked out, with a few differences from what I saw there. Like certainly the enemy that they were fighting, it changed, for example, but based on that first book. But largely it really boiled down to the same thing overall. And but predictability really doesn't hamper the enjoyment of this series. Like it's fun, it's action packed. It's one of those series, honestly, you turn your brain off, you enjoy, and you have a good time with it. Don't you, especially if you're saturated with like classic fantasy tropes, just don't make it harder on yourself than you need to be. Accept it for what it is and just enjoy the ride. And it is a fun ride. It is a very fun ride. From the third book onward, and this book is very much a climax of the series. It just gets really fun. Like I mentioned in my talk on the previous book, Prince of Fury, that book felt all like setup, and in this book we do see the payoff of all that setup. Like this is very much a climax of the series, and it's the first series ending I've ever read by Jim Butcher. Is I think is the only one he's written to date. His two other major series are ongoing. So like I really wasn't sure if he could stick the landing or not, and I think he stuck it. In a cool way. In a cool way. It it played out, like I said, it plays out in broad strokes what you would how you would expect it to play out, but the devil's in the details, right? And that kind of brings me to one of the more amusing things I found about this book. Like one of my frequent complaints about this series is that no one really develops in character wise other than Tavi, and but you kind of waited until the penultimate hour to really have some characters undergo like real growth. And when I say like real growth, I'm talking about like emotional and personality and these kind of things. Like there are some changes along the way that happen with some characters, but those were largely driven by the necessities of the plot. This one we actually saw some growth in some characters, and better late than never. But it is what it is. I did want to I did want to mention that in the final book of the series, he did manage to, or at least maybe I finally noticed it. He did manage to defeat that little critique that I found. Um, yeah, I don't think I really have anything else to say about this series that I can't talk about without it being a spoiler. Like, it is a very fun, action-packed ending. Like, as I mentioned, the cool thing is that this all takes place in a location where the the people were preparing for the invasion. So Butcher pulls out all the stops here. There's some very interesting things that happen, and seeds are planted. Like, if this series is long done, I don't think there's any hope of a sequel at this point. But if he did choose to do so, some seeds were laid here that could very easily be taken and run with to create some very interesting things in a sequel series. But I personally hope that's not the case. This series, for its flaws, or if you want to consider them flaws, it works really well. And this book, it really was just a great capstone to the entire thing. A really fun book, a great adventure classic fantasy kind of story, with in very much like epic fantasy style. And honestly, I think I don't really have much else to say about this book. If you're interested in this series, I wouldn't rank it as a super high priority to get to, but I would say that overall it is certainly a very fun read, especially if you're a fan of Jim Butcher and you want to. It's probably going to be, you're probably going to enjoy it a heck of a lot more than quite a few other books out there, I would say. And yeah. Oh, one thing I did want to mention is that, like, the whole concept of this series was, someone challenged Butcher to write a book based using, like, the Lost Roman Legion and Pokemon. And throughout this entire series, I kept wondering, like, where exactly the Lost Roman Legion played into it. Like, obviously the Roman influence is there throughout the entire thing, so that it's quite clear that there is some influence there. But I didn't know quite how that particular tidbit fit into it. All questions get answered in this final book. Like, there were some mysteries left to be unpacked, and Butcher chose the very last book in the series to unpack them. So that was cool. That was really cool. And okay, yeah, I think that's all I have to say about this series. Fun stuff. If you're interested in it, definitely worth a shot. And yeah, if you've made it this far into the video, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.